of a developing embryo is this. What would this be called here? First week. It's burrowing in. So this is it a morula? Is it a blastula? Is it a gastrula? What would you say this is? No.
Gastrula.
This is a blastula. It's a hollow cyst. And what would distinguish it from a gastrula is a gastrula would have 3 layers. This only has 2. It has an epiblast and a hypoblast. So this is the amniotic cavity, and the yolk cavity hasn't even formed yet. This is a gastrula. And if I ask what is occurring
Didn't
here,
he just say it's a blastula?
this is implantation. This is really syncytiotrophoblasts burrowing into the endometrium. Here's the endometrium. This is the functionalis. And
So that's a blastula, not a gastrula.
this is a blastula.
Thank
Week
you.
1 is a blastula. It just has an epiblast and a hypoblast. This is the stratum functionalis, and implantation is occurring. The first week, it's implantation. And this is implantation. It's not completely underneath there. This is the trophoblastic cells. It's not completely in there, but it's burrowing in. Gastrula, implanting, week 1. Trophoblast cells, epiblast, hypoblast. A blastula or a blastocyst. I could say amniotic cavity, but I have better ones to use for that. And I'd rather use an amniotic sac than an amniotic cavity. So this is week 2. It says it's day 15. At this point here, I still only see 2 layers. Week 2 is just beginning. Here on my chart, I'm putting that's when a gastrula forms. It's in the book, it shows that. But right around now, it should start. We're seeing some mesoderm migrate here, I think, in gray. But this is still an epiblast and a hypoblast. So I won't call it a gastrula yet. What would I call this sac from the epiblast?
Mesoderm.
An amniotic sac. What about this yellow one?
Yolk sac.
That's a yolk sac. What about this little nipple coming off the yolk sac? That's the allantois starting to form back here.
How do you spell that? Is it, I don't know.
Allantois? A-L-L.
Oh, there it is. Never mind.
O-I-S.
Thank you.
On here, right there.
I got it.
This over here is the decidua functionalis. Here are trophoblastic villi. And it's burrowing into the endometrium. You can see here there's the muscle layer. Here's the endometrial layer. And it's pretty much entirely now within the endometrium. Remember, the baby doesn't form with the embryo, doesn't form within the uterine cavity. Look at this picture. Here's the uterine cavity. The embryo is forming within the wall. The wall bulges out. Eventually this whole wall attaches to this side. But it's not in the lumen. It's protected in the wall. It's within the wall. Here's the lumen of the uterus. So now we move to week 3. And this one doesn't show you much of the uterus at all. It's showing you the embryo. And here I can see 3 layers. I have ectoderm, I have mesoderm, yellow, ectoderm, pink, and in between, as this dark or this greenish brown color, this is mesoderm. This is a gastrula. And because I can even see blood vessels going back this body stalk, if you called it an allantois, I'd give you that too, but it's probably a body stalk at this point. I see blood vessels coming in here. It's almost starting to form an umbilical cord. The blood vessels are going through the trophoblast cells. I would now call this a chorion. Again, if you say trophoblastic villi, I'm not going to mark you wrong. But this is probably technically chorionic villi. And these areas in between are the lacunae from the mother. And exchange occurs by diffusion through the lacunae into these chorionic villi into blood vessels. Waste products are going away out these blue umbilical arteries, and nutrients and oxygen are coming in through these red umbilical veins. The veins return back to the developing embryo. So from this, I would see I have a gastrula with 3 germ layers, and I have chorionic villi. Oh, that's right. I could also say this pink is an amniotic sac, this yellow is a yolk sac. That's fair to say. But for a yolk sac, I might like this picture. The yolk sac's getting very small here, but clearly this is a yolk sac. And by this time, this is an umbilical cord forming. This is week 4. This used to be the decidua, it is the decidua basalis. It has all these blood and glandular tissues coming in here. The decidua capsularis on this side doesn't have as much blood coming in. And so it doesn't have that many villi, chorionic villi. The placenta will be very strong on this side. And if I turn this over, you can see how this area of the endometrium is hyperemic, very red. The capsular region, the decidua capsularis, is pink. So the capsular region doesn't have very much exchange. Most of it is starting to occur in the decidua basalis. Here is the embryo developing, the head or the tail over here. And this, in white, is the amniotic cavity. Alright, I guess that's it. Chorionic villi, lacunae, decidua basalis, decidua capsularis, yolk sac, amnion, and embryo. Not yet a fetus, but during this time, this is week 4, cells are starting to specialize. By week 5, some of the organs are starting to form. This is the first month. And they're showing you the endometrial wall. Whoop. This is, I guess, the decidua basalis. The decidua capsularis is over here. Here is the embryo. This is the amniotic sac that it's in. And the umbilical cord is over there. So this is where the placenta is. We have the chorion probably in dark, and the amnion here, the red. The chorion dark and the decidua red. Together that makes up the placenta. We don't call it a fetus yet till week 9.
Damn,
So
what
this
week are we
is
on?
the second month. It's almost a fetus at this point, because second month is 8 weeks. At the end of the second month, you're really just about there. Clearly, here's a placenta. Chorion and decidua. This is the uterine cavity on the outside. But the amniotic sac is over here. The chorion is out here. The amnion and the chorion at this time have almost merged. to make an amniochorionic membrane. They have better ways of doing it now, but they used to do amniocentesis, you know, after the first try, not at this point. But they would stick a needle in to the sac, which is kind of dangerous that you don't puncture the developing fetus, because they would do it at the time of a fetus. And this material, this fluid that's going to keep adhesions from forming and keep the fetus buoyant in there, it has some urine and some cells from the fetus get sloughed off in there. When you suck out some fluid, you get some fetal cells. You can look at the genetics of the cells, determine if there's Down syndrome or some other abnormality that might occur. You also know when the time they do it, the spinal cord should be closed. At this point, the spinal cord might still be open. But at the time that they do amniocentesis, the spinal cord is closed. When the spinal cord is closed, there's something in an alpha-fetoglobulin protein that's not supposed to be present. It's present when the spinal cord is open. If it's still present, they would suspect spina bifida, that the cord hasn't closed yet, and that the person will probably be born with spina bifida. So that's another thing they can look for. If I was to show a fetus and ask what it is here, at this point I would call it a fetus. And this here is the 3rd month. So clearly that's this is the end of the first try. After 9 weeks we have a fetus. Once you have a fetus, once you have 9 for the first try, the placenta is complete. Here's the placenta. It has the chorion and the deciduum. And these arteries and veins will all go back through the umbilical cord, entering the belly button there, the umbilicus, and heading back to the liver. It goes through that falciform, what later turns into a falciform ligament in the liver. So the liver, again, gets first crack at nutrients, and then it leaves the inferior immune cavity and gets pumped to the heart. But you can see all the organs are in place: the ear, the mouth, the nose, the fingers. So this is, here is the cervix down here. And if I tilted it a little bit better, you can see, well, I wasn't showing the cervix so well. You can see the vagina here with the rugae folds and the fornix on either side. The external os is this way and the internal os is this way. You wouldn't want the baby to start to try and develop here in the cervix, or you'd be in problem. This is protection from infections and stuff. And it's within the wall. It looks like it's just growing in the uterine cavity, but this wall has expanded all the way to the other side. It's really within, it was within this wall on this side, but this wall bulged out so much. And then we move along into our second try. I don't think I would use this other than if I was pointing out that this area here is the placenta. Here's the cervix with the vagina below.